we've got this recording. If you're watching the recording and this part wasn't edited out, thank you for watching the recording, spending whatever day it is with us. Thank you all for taking out a little bit of time. Excited to get into a hot topic, two little letters I keep hearing about these days around AI. Specifically today, we want to have a deeper discussion around not just AI and tech and cool possibilities, but how do you actually get ready to use it, particularly in an enterprise context as a product organization? What can you be doing to prepare to leverage and take advantage of the power of artificial intelligence? So we're going to get into that with our awesome panelists, who I'll introduce in just a moment. But before I do that, shameless plug time. We like events. We love the community. We have leadership summits that we do in person, if you're into that kind of thing, just about every month. We just had one last week in Seattle. I saw TJ in person. It was great. And Robin and Kim, actually. We're going to be in New York here just in a couple of weeks. We've got Austin, Texas, Los Angeles, and we try to hit at least San Francisco and New York 2 or 3 times a year. We hit a bunch of other major cities. If your city's not on the list, please hit us up. Tell us to put it on the list. You can sign up for these events at knapsack.cloud/events or /patterns. Really amazing time just to meet your peers, focus on community and conversation and shared insights, and hopefully take away some new connections. Love to see you in person there. Whether or not you can make it in person, we also do a lot of these internet-based events, if you will, webinars, talks, panel discussions. Next month, we'll be doing a webinar specifically on our new MCP server, model context protocol servers, very popular, all the rage these days as we think about how do we actually give AI tools the context that they need to make their outputs be really effective and not just based on whatever is in the lots of text that they were trained on. So more heady topics coming your way. Obviously the blog as well. We try to keep you busy with things to read. And of course the Design Systems podcast. So we try to keep you surrounded. Check us out, knapsack.cloud, the events, the blog, Design System podcast. You can find them all there. And last but not least, if you want to learn about our actual software, given we are a software company, we do a live demo every week. Nice way to get dip your toes into an understanding with a live demo of what Knapsack can do, where we're going, some of the new hotness. Check it out every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific. Again, check the website. Alrighty, obligatory stuff done. Excited to get into this panel today. So I'm Andrew. I'm the Chief Customer Officer at Knapsack. I spend a lot of my time talking with engineering product design leaders about digital production in general, about their tooling, about where they're going. And today, a lot about how do we balance trying to do what we were doing yesterday a little better while also staring at this vague, urgent future AI thing. And so I'm joined today by some amazing panelists from big companies, from consultancies, from our own wonderful team at Knapsack. So let's go around. I'll let you introduce yourselves and maybe tell us a little bit about, when it comes to AI and getting ready to take advantage of it, what are you thinking a lot about these days? We'll start with you, Devin.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. Hi, everyone. I'm Devin Rose. I'm really happy to be here. I'm the lead global content acceleration product person at GSK, and I'm thinking a lot about how we can rethink more of our processes as an enterprise when it comes to supporting AI technology. This will be a big theme for what I have to say today. Is it's never just about the tech. It has to do so much with the processes and everything kind of surrounding it to make sure that we get that adoption and we can start making more of an impact.
Awesome. I'm going to pull out one of those threads here just in a minute. But TJ, tell us about yourself.
I'm TJ Petrie, founder and CEO of an agency called South Left. We primarily focus on front-end design and development. And within that realm, we focus mainly in design systems. For the piece of AI that we're mainly focused on, we try to kind of pull at the patterns that we see when we work with various organizations. That's issues that have always seemed to be kind of accepted as status quo. And a lot of those issues revolve around communication and organizational issues. And right now, at this moment, we're trying to create products and leverage AI to maybe close those gaps a little bit or help tighten communication cycles. A lot of the tools that we built are some of the internal pieces that we do to help with some of the projects that we're on with some audits and various different types of projects. And then we've recently just started to put some of those out there for other folks to be able to play around with and hopefully help them too.
Awesome. I love to get the agency angle. I'm sure we can learn about a broad swath of different types of companies if you're picking your brain a bit. Robin, over to you.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm Robin. I am the head of product at Knapsack. I've been here 7 months, which is still not very long, although I'm starting to feel like proper veteran. But I've known Knapsack for a while. And previously I led the carbon design system at IBM. I led the salt design system at JP Morgan. I worked on the enterprise scale consulting side of design systems at IBM as well. What I'm really interested in, I think, when it comes to AI is not just automating what already exists and making that faster, but actually being able to have a genuine sea change in how we deliver product. I think that opportunity is there. And I think the other thing that I spend a lot of time doing at the moment is trying to make sure that I'm doing I'm talking about, is I'm using AI a lot myself. I'm getting confident. I'm determining where it can bring clarity and where it can bring confusion. And I'm trying to, make that something that we shouldn't be scared of. I think there's still a little bit of a perception in some companies that AI is cheating. And I'm trying to change that aspect too.
I love that. I want to start by going back to something you said, Devin. Right? It's not always the technology. We can all point to a million things that we saw that were super cool, aspirational, paint a picture of the future. You work at a massive global pharmaceutical corporation, and you've actually been all in, relatively speaking, on AI as a company for quite a while, but it's not all just turn it on and use it, right? Like what's been some of the journey between, hey, we're excited about this stuff, but what are the things you have to think about to actually be able to, as you say in the headline, be ready to take advantage of the tech no matter what it can do?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I think, to your point, GSK has always been or have been quite early when it comes to trying to implement AI technology at scale. And we're really doubling down on that approach. We're trying to leverage AI across the entire business. And we want to make sure that we're empowering different teams to use AI in different ways. So there's been kind of little pockets of AI pods that have sprouted up across the organization over the last couple of years. And we've made an effort now it's kind of like there's aspects that need to be centralized and there's aspects that need to be decentralized. And we're trying to find that right balance. And it was a little bit of a trial and error for the past couple of years. So recently there's been more effort around trying to consolidate aspects, like foundational aspects of AI product development, so that we can share learnings better across, big swaths of the organization, like R&D. And then where I sit in commercial, there's aspects of what we're building where there's more that we can do to learn from each other, but we also don't want to hold parts of the company back and doing their own sorts of experimentation. So I have a lot to say about like how we've approached different aspects of that. How do we enable the organization to start rapidly using AI in a compliant manner, and what we centralize versus what sorts of power and flexibility we give to teams on the ground, while still making sure, obviously, we're not jeopardizing, GSK or putting us at risk in any way. But yeah, I think just going back to like what makes us successful in doing this, or what we've learned, is that it's never just about the tech. I sit in the tech organization, but really AI is now touching folks, in every part of the organization. And when you're thinking about a global company like GSK, so much of whether or not something lands or is successful, or people can stay on the journey with us as we look to evolve AI products, is really all about, culture. You have to think about how we work with people across different cultures, whether or not they're trusting of the different solutions that are available, wherever they're coming from, and also their skill set and level of comfort with adopting new technology. So all of that has kind of come into play, and we're starting to understand better about how to make things successful at a big company like GSK. But definitely, there's been so much of a frenzy, I think, to bring in new technology that we had to really learn really quickly about what's working and what's not working. And it's not just about the tech; it's about like how we sort of try to land it with the users.
Yeah, I think to some extent it's never about the tech almost. I think one of the things, because AI is fairly new, it's the latest in that, oh, look, here's something new and cool. And the web was like that. Design systems were like that. I spent a lot of I was writing about this recently because it was resonating with me. There's an AMC show from a few years ago called Halt and Catch Fire, which has the phrase in it, computers aren't the thing, they're the thing that gets you to the thing. The idea being that you need to focus on what comes next. What are you trying to achieve? My twist on that with design systems is nobody ever builds a design system for the sake of having a design system. And now I think for a lot of companies at the moment, we're like AI, we see a lot of the research about how much in terms of inward investment by companies is going towards AI. Uh, and I worry that some of it's like, cool, because it's got AI in it. Or let's just make it AI. But what does that really mean? What is purposeful? Um, because really behind all of those technologies and models, we're still trying to find something that provides meaning, for want of a better term.
TJ, I'm curious. I know you. So if you don't follow TJ on LinkedIn, you should follow TJ on LinkedIn. When you talk about like what's possible, what might we be able to do with some experimental tech, you do more than anyone I see, and I know you talk to a lot of companies that are like, hey, we need to do AI. But like, what's that gap when you come in? I'm curious, what kind of trends do you see of, again, readiness to use whatever the tech is? Like, are they there, or is it just I need to do AI?
Oh, it's all over the place, to be honest. And a lot of it has to do with like the size of the organization. Kind of what Devin was referring to earlier. There's a lot of, it seems like the larger the organization, the more critical of the AI usage they are. And some AI is like it's almost like there's like marketing or decision makers who are pushing the AI initiative or battling against IT, and like the people who are trying to like do all the checking for security and whether or not it's it checks all the boxes to ensure that it doesn't put the company at harm. Uh, so a lot of organizations that we work with on the larger enterprise scale are surprisingly the ones that are like the least AI involved, or the ones that have like they're AI curious as to how it can help make their workflows more efficient, but they just haven't had the opportunity to really do anything with it besides maybe using some ChatGPT or Gemini. A lot of times it's like enterprise Gemini in these larger organizations, and they'll use those tools or whatever features that are available to like help with bugs, or how do I make this function more efficient, or with some workshopping things. But some of the smaller, more nimble organizations are the ones that seem to be more capable of trying things, and it's probably through more personal accounts and maybe not affiliated with companies. Um, uh, those are the ones who are uh, more willing to like kind of throw the spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks, and test out different methods and see what works for them. And from when we started doing a lot of this kind of AI driven design systems flows, and when we were testing things and then working with organizations to see how it might work with them, and seeing the benefits from it. And this is, probably a year ago from now, and where we are today is a lot further ahead. Like a lot more organizations are very much open and able to accept some of these AI workflows, which is great. And so it enables us to do more exploring and experimenting with other things. And I think that's kind of how we got to where we are today, with like just kind of rattling off all these products and services and like things that the workflows that we've developed internally to help support a specific project need, that we're able to kind of expand, and you're like, oh, you know what, if we just like added on this little feature, this might help this organization that has this specific need, and so on and so on. But yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with internal pieces within those organizations and how restrictions might apply to their usage and whatnot.
Why I love having people like Devin on, because I generally believe if we can find a way to make it work at GSK, everyone else will have some simpler version of that journey. Um, so Devin, in your experience, you've got this sort of dichotomy of we've got extreme excitement around possibilities and desire to experiment because my friend showed me a tool and I can just use it. And the side, the counterpart of enterprise regulatory constraint hell, right?
Yeah.
It's internal tech or things you ship. How have you seen the organization attempt to balance that innovative part with the we still have to do right by all the things we're need to be compliant to?
Yeah. So when we started this journey a couple of years ago, really trying to double down on AI product development, it was very much siloed, and it was specific teams that were just working on this, which made it a great place to start. But I think as there are more and more exciting platforms and tools that are out there and really showing how magical they are to just about everyone at our organization, there became a lot more interest. And hey, can you check out this tool? Is this something that we could use at GSK? Maybe we could do things this way. So it really caused us to take a look at how we were, we don't want to hold anyone back at GSK, obviously. Like, we are very invested in tech and want people to have the latest and greatest, but obviously we're balancing that as a highly regulated company in a highly regulated industry worldwide, lots of different legal things to consider. So we very quickly realized that we needed to take a moment and really centralize our AI governance efforts. So we spent a lot of time doing that to make sure that we had, cross-functional representation with legal, compliance, risk. Our data scientists had to get involved with this process, obviously our AI product leads. So standing up a functional governance to help us not just bring tech to GSK, but also to help us with evaluating new ideas, and evaluating other sort of third-party options that we had out there in a way that, well, first we had to stand it up. Then it slowed everything down. You can imagine that would created a huge bottleneck. So then we had to automate aspects of that process. We had to create a centralized, team to work just on this exclusively. We had to set up lots of different processes really to unblock us so that we could be more efficient in bringing this technology and helping to, enable pockets of experimentation within reason. Obviously, we can't just take everything and scale it. We have to be reasonable about what we allow folks to do. And obviously we still have other sorts of centralized teams focused on AI product development, but as much as possible, we needed to stand something like this up. And I think that for a big company like GSK or other big companies, that's probably one of the most critical starting points, is to really make sure that you've figured out how the governance will work and how you'll intake new ideas from different parties in the organization. Because again, AI touches everyone. Everyone's going to have ideas about how AI can help with their own day-to-day, help drive business goals, whatever the case may be. And we need ways of rapidly evaluating new ideas that come up and seeing what works. And obviously, if something's working for one person or for one team, how do we then rapidly scale that and make it available to everyone?
I'm curious, do you see, to anyone here, do you see a correlation between, going back to something Robin said, this isn't just about how do we accelerate current ways of working or old ways of working, right? It's also about how do we open up new, entirely different ways of working. Is there a correlation between how different the process is to how much more overhead and governance and things we need to figure out? Or I'm curious how we see process evolution happening, as well as the oh man, we don't even have a governance board for that, right? We're not just tweaking something we already had. This is entirely new, right? Is there any correlation there, or what drives the sort of complexity and newness of it beyond just the tech, or is it just the tech?
Part of me thinks it's a reverse correlation. The more we can, the more we can collapse and change the old ways of working, um, the more we need new models to govern. Now, I think the long-term advantage there is there's going to be a lot of work to how do we do that? How do we build governance models? But it's a different kind of governance model because I think one of the joys and advantages, and I think the reason we believe in AI is it gets you much faster to working with something real that is close to being ready to be deployed, um, and hopefully skips a bunch of those steps. So whereas now we might have quite divided governance at different points of abstraction, at different points of handoff, that all individually might be fairly simple. Um, I think now we're going to have to change that to like, actually, we need to get much better organization, and lots of enterprises are already not good at this, at gating what gets released and gating what gets deployed until there is a really robust governance process, not just in the thing itself, but actually how it was made as well.
As much as AI helps with efficiencies and speed and all those things, it's one of the main key parts of any new workflow where you're adopting AI between various layers within the organization. That it's, and this is one of the things I always talk about. It's like you got to have human involvement throughout the whole process. It's not like you can't just lay off your whole team and say, I'm just going all in on AI and then just assume it's going to automate the whole process. But yeah, when it gets to like the pull request pieces, I don't care how many tests, unit tests, pull request bots you have reviewing, there's got to be human eyes on it before it enters any sort of production environment or whatever the next step of the way is.
And I think that's true not just for that's not true that's true not just for governance, but for quality or differentiation. Because I think this is the other thing, like AI, if it accelerates us, and particularly I think, as we become increasingly confident in its usage, we may see a genericization of output because everything gets built by AI. I mean, I was thinking just like almost facetiously while you were talking, like, well, we could just get AI to write the governance standards as well. Uh,
But
uh,
somebody got to review it.
well, then you turn into a really interesting feedback loop. But I do think that as we move faster towards building, and AI helps us do that, the human differentiation, both for governance and quality, is actually going to become more important rather than less important. That last 10% of human excellence, we're freed to now actually focus on the things that we do that make things excellent in a way that maybe we weren't before.
And I think that's so important, like when we talk about the process, not just the tech. It's exactly like the tech isn't just replacing humans in this process. It's then where do humans double down in the process to then unlock a really powerful result. So that's kind of what we're trying to marry at this moment. There's such a frenzy to bring new technology and put it in the hands of users, but we need to be really intentional, especially at a big company, making sure we really think through what this means for an individual or for a team and how their attention to different parts of the process can shift so that they can work alongside the technology to really drive results.
I, it's like AI is great at like the dumb stuff. Not dumb stuff, I don't want to say dumb stuff. Like AI is great at like the mundane things that there are parts of what AI produces that feels like I could just do a cursory glance at it and know that it's going to be right. But then I do love the idea of the human involvement that does the part that AI can't do well. And it's usually the parts that humans enjoy the most. Like it's like either the creative pieces, that's like the aesthetics, or it's the trim on the documentation that really makes it feel whole or comprehensive. And so like AI can churn out the specs and props and like all the things and the guidelines and all that stuff. That's all very necessary, but likely in the future will all be consumed by AI anyway. But for the human parts that are the contributed parts are also probably the parts that the humans like reading the most too, and that would get them engaged. So yeah, I do think a large extent, depending on your organization, 80% of it is probably going to end up being all AI written. But I tend to think that the pieces that'll allow it to get read and seen and appeal to the people who you're putting that in front of, or the human parts.
There is this interesting, I mean, the human aspect is fascinating, right? Of like both who we're serving and the people doing the serving. You make me think of when I used to work building homes, and like my favorite part was not nailing wood to wood, it was problem solving, right? And that is an intensely human aspect that's harder to solve for, bolting things together, relatively rote, and everyone needs a good intern to do some of that stuff. But it also opens up a question around the change management side. I just dropped an image in the chat. It's a screenshot. So I don't know if anyone's seen this. I reference this all the time. This is, people describe process, and I can get it actually to open on mine, but people describe process of digital production with AI, right? And we have waterfall, agile, and we're kind of opening up this whole other realm of, we're doing it backwards. We're taking something that is in theory shippable, but also not real, and not what we're going to do, especially in enterprise with our components. But I made a thing in Figma Make, super cool, best ideation and prototyping, but like still a long way to production. But you're giving something to a stakeholder that feels real and like it's live, right? As opposed to someone who used to see a wireframe and then an image with lorem ipsum, and they'd be like, why is it Latin? And then a picture in a PDF, right? And so we're, aside from just the tooling, like there's so much that comes with this. We want to take advantage of it. You have to re-educate all your stakeholders, everyone who's ever been involved in your process, that the process is changing. Like it strikes me that it's more than just governance. It's figuring out, just as an organization, as a team, as a process, almost as a culture, how do we want to shift? Where do we want to be intentional? Otherwise, we're all just like, if you come in and switch my workflow around 180 degrees, it can be disorienting. So like, how do you deal with that? How do you prepare for that we might do things wildly differently?
There's a cultural change there. I think I think all of us who've worked in any kind of digital production or design type environment, you realize the moment you start creating things that have high fidelity, you're like, oh, here's a prototype that I've made that is intended to demonstrate the function of this thing, and I've decided to make it blue. And we're now going to spend 25 minutes in the presentation to the stakeholder arguing about whether it should be blue. That's going to get worse because they're going to see something that you've spat out as a vibe coding concept, and they're like, great, let's ship it. And I think that's the big cultural change, is like, okay, we can be creative much, much, much faster. It removes the constraints to that creativity. I think, especially when we're talking about AI readiness, is like, okay, well, what does that mean at enterprise scale? I think that's the biggest single difference for enterprise and for business is I can play around with stuff, you can play around with stuff and make really cool stuff, whether it's with ChatGPT, whether it's with Cursor, whether it's with Lovable, whatever. And you're like, this is great fun. And actually, if it was just me, I probably would be fairly comfortable to put that out to the world. GSK is not going to do that. And companies much smaller than GSK are not going to do that. How do we actually say, okay, we've got this unconstrained creativity. How do we now start to put constraints on it in the way that we don't lose the human excellence? We actually just bring it back to something that has real value.
I'd be curious to hear from Devin about, like, with the rise of, like, what Robin's talking about, is there like a surgence of like scrappy junior to mid-level designers and developers coming with all these creative ideas because of like the ability? Because now, like, there used to be a barrier between creativity or what they're able to produce and lack of knowledge or experience of like how to do it. Now that barrier has been significantly lowered, and so now they can kind of like, like, for lack of a better term, vibe code. I try to differentiate vibe coding from like context engineering, but essentially what they're doing is vibing these things into existence. And so now they have the opportunity to be like, I have this really great idea and I have the wherewithal to be able to bring it to life. Here's my pitch. Do you ever see that in your organization?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing it more, and I think that's kind of where we want to go next, is how do we use the governance that we have to inspire more pockets of innovation and really support folks on their own personal AI journeys, right? Like we want people to, we're spending a lot of effort on raising the digital fluency at GSK because everyone has a different starting point, a different level of like personal interest. So yeah, we want people to be able to figure out better ways to, augment their day to day so that they can focus on the things that they think is more important for them to focus on. Whereas where I sit, in our enterprise AI organization, I'm thinking more about how to unlock, marketing or commercial teams on aspects that all of them are having to do day to day. So we really want to inspire people to do that at scale. But I will say, anytime we're looking at rolling out something new or looking for a team to collaborate with, it's always important to, assess that level of comfort, adaptability, digital fluency right off the bat. I've learned it's not necessarily a good thing to take a brand team that's trying to launch and have them involved with pilots, for instance. There's probably more higher stake, like better, more important, higher stakes activities that they should be working on. So we need to be really intentional about who we work with and when at different points in, scaling up new AI and new tech. Andrew, I love this screenshot that you sent. I'm going to save this because I think, for a lot of people we work with, they're used to seeing, I work in the content space and like content coming to life at different aspects of the supply chain. But when you start with something fully baked and then have to kind of take a few steps back, that's like a complete shift in how everyone is used to working. So, when we're talking about product adoption and trying to accelerate content creation, it's more than just trying to fit tech into a day-to-day process. It's really reworking expectations around what is possible and how to work with different outputs at different stages. So change management is huge. I mean, it's at a big company, you can never underestimate the level of effort involved with change management. But I think here with AI, it's just so different than, moving from waterfall to agile even. I mean, I feel like most people here probably were part of that big change. And now AI, I think, flips everything on its head. You're starting with a fully baked product and have to backtrack and kind of rework it from there.
Yeah, I mean, we analogize to a lot of different, evolution in the world of digital production. I think a lot about, agile waterfall. You talk about, I think about, the move to responsive. I was joking with someone last week how like responsive used to be a line item on a website contract when I was in the agency world, and would you want to pay extra to make it responsive? It's just lunacy these days. And then I thought very similarly of design systems. It reminded me of responsive. We'd be like, well, this is just the way we do it. But the thing with, AI is someone said magic earlier, right? It feels so magical. It feels like the potential ROI is so huge, but also comes with such drastic change that it's not just, hey, you're going to get a link instead of a PDF now, back to my Envision days, right? That was game changing, but it was the same process. And now we're saying, hey, I'm going to make a thing. And I actually applaud someone last week told a story how they went to leadership and they didn't get the reaction of like, oh, can we ship it? They were like, whoa, this is a crazy better way to ideate. Can we do more of this? And I feel like I don't see a lot of that. I feel more of the, oh, great, so it's done now.
Yeah, I think that's a really important cultural change. The idea, because we're going to be able to ideate so fast. Like honestly, like it's not necessarily like, oh, we can ship 10 times faster, so much as we can have 10 different personas that we address, or we can ideate much, much more quickly. But if we thought feature creep was a problem in the past, now we're gonna be like, okay, actually, this is great conceptually. We need to quarter the number of features we have for this to make sense.
It can get overwhelming. Yeah, I've definitely seen, we've been on that end too. Like we've gotten to the point to where when we're working with from an agency perspective, when we're working with potential clients and we're working through proposals, sometimes it's easier for us just to prototype the tool that they're asking for based on the amount of specs and knowledge we have about what it is they're trying to build. And a lot of times they share similarities with previous things that we've already worked on. So we kind of have a baseline of what the expectation of what this tool should be like. And we have some agents and things that we like to leverage to be able to cobble these things together fairly quickly. So like along with a written up proposal, we can put together, it's like, well, here's kind of what we're thinking you're thinking. And it took us less than 30 minutes to put together. It's not hooked up to any APIs or anything, but you get the gist of like how you can start visualizing and interacting with this tool. It's like taking like a Figma prototype and like propelling it into the to like an actual interactive web-based version of it.
Yeah, I think it is that beauty of here's the thing I'm trying to explain to you.
Yeah. And then we can iterate over it. It's like, come on, we'll hop on a Zoom and then we'll screen share it. We're not shy about showing them how we did it. It's like we can hop in cursor together and get rid of this feature, add this new feature, tweak this feature.
Yeah, we had an event a year or so ago, and Dan Mall came and he said, "Hey, the person who brings a thing to the meeting and not that isn't a PowerPoint deck, they win, right? They're going to get more attention. They're going to get more people standing around them and talk to them. And I feel like it's easier than ever to do that, but with that comes certainly a lot of expectation management, which
I love that quote, Andrew. He said, "The work always wins," and I've thought about that so much since he said that. Every meeting that we have, being at a big company, I feel like I'm in meetings all day, but to just be able to bring something to that meeting to help drive the conversation and give everyone something tangible to discuss, rather than going through the same sort of agenda points, just makes everything so much more productive. And I think it also helps to normalize using AI day to day. I always try to lead by example, right? Like, how am I using AI to bring things to life or to streamline my own day? And I think that I've seen the benefit of driving discussions or meetings just by bringing something to life for folks, and to normalize that this is an acceptable way of working, right? It's proven that it's been helpful to get from point A to point B quicker, to rally behind something more tangible. So we just need to see it more in practice, I think, to get people's level of comfort a little bit higher with that approach.
Can I offer a slight
Love that.
counterpoint as well?
yeah.
Sure.
Which is, I mean, partly because we're going to hit this situation. Are we going to hit a situation where everybody's going to bring something and then the person who brings the PowerPoint stands out because everyone's like, oh, actually, we're looking at this in a slightly more considered way? Because
It
I
all comes
think,
full circle.
yeah, basically, because I think this is one fear that I have about, we talk a lot about trying to understand the problem before we solve it. I think one big danger is that we're going to jump to solutioning much too quickly with AI. We should be giving AI problems, not solutions.
But if it's the wrong solution, wouldn't it be easier to iterate on whatever the right solution is? Because it's like the faster you can get to how many, what's that, fail fast, fail often. So if you can just like keep going through and failing and
But I think
getting,
you need to understand the problem first, and that's my fear is that everyone's gonna like. So when I joined IBM, um, too many years ago now, one of the exercises they did around IBM design thinking was the first question was like, can you design a vase? And everybody drew a version of a vase. And then the next one was, can you create an attractive way of showing flowers and plants in the home? Um, and obviously, there's lots more variations on that. I think my worry is we'll design lots and lots of vases
Mhm.
if we are not asking the right questions.
So I'm curious, Devin, you talked about
Yeah.
governance and controls, but
Yeah.
enablement and controls are different things, right? And Robin just talked about something that is almost more about education and how do you think thoughtfully about you could think of what Robin just said as I use AI in the process here once I had already come up with a solution versus I used it earlier when I was coming up with solutions. But is
Yeah.
is there any sense of like how do we cultivate awareness of the best way to leverage these in guidance at a company like yours, or is it well, don't use them this way, and that's what we worry about?
Yeah, I would say at a big company like GSK, definitely people are coming in from all angles. I mean, level of comfort with AI just varies so much. And again, the cultural aspects of it too. So personally, I think anywhere that we can promote the use of AI in a compliant manner, obviously, is a win for now, because my goal is to normalize the use of AI and to demonstrate how it could be used not just for solutioning, but for ideation. I think trying to position like, hey, here's how I'm using AI in this process or in this instance, and explaining, why I choose to use it, how I'm using it, just to bring awareness in practice personally is a way that I'm trying to promote the comfort and accessibility of AI to everyone. So I feel like that's just kind of where we are and how to start normalizing it. I think at a smaller company, this is probably a lot easier to set up, to have more like information sharing about how we use certain tools and when and what our culture is around it. But I'm oftentimes in meetings with people, that I don't work with every day, that I don't have a normal day-to-day working relationship with. And I think it's just important to me to try to demonstrate how I'm using it and to also learn from others how they're using it, to hopefully get to that point where people's level of comfort is just a lot higher, and then we can try and figure out like how do we as a large company try to standardize our approach a little bit, or set people up better with like the toolkits that they need to plug in AI in a more precise way. So I think right now it's more about like awareness and just opening the door at a basic level. Obviously, with product teams that are doing stuff with AI every day, that conversation's a little bit different. And we can be more intentional about like, hey, I'm going to use AI for this aspect of the process, and here's why. But yeah.
That question at GSK particularly, or any kind of genuinely highly regulated industry, is it also, I imagine it is, but how much of it is it also a challenge that the law around AI isn't there yet, hasn't caught up yet?
Yeah.
It's a lot of very gray area.
This is something that we're definitely keeping our eyes on, because I expect there to be more regulation, maybe not here in the US, maybe other countries, but this is definitely something we need to keep our eyes on, about how different markets are going to be looking to regulate the use of AI across the board. I mean, we could see anything. It hasn't really started yet, but I expect that to be something in maybe the next year or so, that we start seeing more restrictive markets coming down with some regulation around the use of AI, especially when it comes to creative development.
Yeah, it's interesting because so much of that regulation, I mean, there's regulation all over the place, but a lot of it in terms of the go-to-market side, the creation of experiences is very outcome focused, output focused,
Mhm.
right? Of like, well, what does it say and look like and do in some final form factor? And extending that to how is the thing made is, again, there's a lot of tangential but somewhat uncharted territory in a lot of these pieces that that's fascinating to explore. Um, I am curious, with a little bit of time we have left, Robin, as someone who, so you explicitly lead the creation and evolution of a platform. A lot of folks may be in a version of that in terms of maybe I'm pioneering some of the AI tooling at my company. But all of these as a creator comes into how do we help people take the most advantage of this and create a good impact? How do you think about some of this uncharted territory as the leader of a AI related product trying to serve some of these regulated companies?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. There's ways to approach it individually. And I think that's about being simple, talking about what things enable, and providing clarity on what AI is doing for the company, not what are we building. I think that's always an important way to talk about it. Um, Highlighting, I think that it's not just about speed. Speed's going to be really exciting for a lot of companies, and a lot of executives, but then I think it's going to become commoditized very quickly. And then I think it's going to be, okay, now we're talking about what tools, what platforms can help you capture the edge cases that are unique to your industry, whether those are creative edge cases, whether those are regulatory edge cases. What can you feed in to teach the AI you're using the specific context to your use case? I think we all have a lot of tools out there. Different companies are using different tools at their core, different models, but it's a non-determinative outcome. And that's scary. So the more that we can feed in additional relevant context, And in the scope that we're talking about with Knapsack, and certainly an area that TJ's done a lot of work in is around design system understanding and design system knowledge, brand guidelines. I feel like in terms of product delivery, you could also be feeding in regulatory guidelines as well, so that then your output becomes safer and closer to adherent as well as complete.
That's the what you were saying earlier about it's almost like these tools are too early to tell on it's much easier for organizations like ours to experiment with like all these different various AI language models and applications that are coming out, much less so with larger organizations. Uh, it does allow us to be a little bit more nimble, and internally um, we don't like mandate everyone use Claude Code or Cursor or anything specific like that. So everybody kind of we give them a monthly stipend to use whatever they want to figure out what works best for them for the outcome of the project or whatever the thing is that we're trying to resolve with AI. And sometimes we'll dabble in AI, but it doesn't actually do anything. Like the end result might actually be a wash. Like it's like manually, we probably could have done it marginally better than what the output was with the AI, but we continue to just chalk it up to like, well, at least I tried it. Because I think one of the big things with AI in general is just the feeling of being overwhelmed by so much stuff that's always out. And it's like we just every day, I don't know how many newsletters you subscribe to, but it's like there's always a flood of something. It's either features being built into existing products that we all use, or it's new products coming out, or new tools to be, increase our workflows and efficiencies. And so it's just we're just bombarded by all this AI noise. It's hard to figure out what's the one that's going to do the job. You kind of get lost in understanding, well, what even is the job? Like, what is the thing that we're
Right.
trying to fix at this point? If we can just set aside a little bit of time to, and that's why we give the stipend, the funds set that way, because you usually don't get much of the free. The free is just a tease. You'll get like, a
Right.
couple of tokens where you can test out a thing. So you pay the $20 a month, go all in for a couple of hours a week, determine whether or not it provides real value, then run it up the chain to see if like, okay, organizationally, this could be something that we could use that solves X problem, whatever that problem might be.
Right.
That's been our like little loop of AI awareness and experimentation before we actually get to building a product that could leverage that AI.
But I'm assuming for someone in Devon's position, like 99.9% of people who work for GSK don't have a choice. They're like, here is the model you use, here are the tools that are approved. And
Yeah, we're trying. Yeah, we definitely want to make it easier because again, there's so many tools out there. We want to help vet things out, and help people experiment in a compliant manner. The other thing that we're trying to do is a lot more hackathons.
Mm.
We'll take
Those have become fun again.
yeah, hackathons are really fun. It's great because you can, I mean, thanks to AI, you don't just need tech folks involved. You can really include anyone in the organization in those, and it's a great way to just get people excited about solving business problems and being open-minded, working side by side with people that are more involved with building, AI technology. And, we've had some great outcomes. We end up building a lot of those things that kind of get spun out of ideas that were generated during the hackathons that we have.
I love
and
that.
I think that, when it's like large organizations are going to have particular choices of like, here is the large language model that we use at GSK or at IBM or at, at JP Morgan. And I think this is the big thing is like, that's not going to be where we drive choice, but where
Right.
we can drive the same kind of contexts to multiple different models. And I think that, the joy that MCP has so quickly been accepted as a fairly universal protocol lets us do that. Now, those models might still come with somewhat different outputs, but we're starting to have a greater degree of control over the context that they use. And for those of us who are in the business of platform building, the advantage there as well is that we're not wedded to any particular tool chain. We're providing context to any tool chain.
That's the beauty of MCP. I think, and I think that to some degree, the language model that's consuming that context would determine the fidelity or quality of that output. But by far, the context that you're feeding into that language model is going to be very important. So, I like that MCP for the what it provides doesn't, it's like LLM agnostic, and it's just like here it is, do with it what you will, and then ideally you chose the right language model that supports the type of context that's being passed into it.
I do think all of this, like a precursor to this, is you need to have a pretty clear appetite for experimentation. You know, going back to a comment you made a few minutes ago, TJ, like that I feel like I keep thinking of this. I can see the Zuckerberg comments in the last day or two. He's like, hey, misspending a couple $100 billion would suck, but probably better than the alternative of not capturing the opportunity. We aren't all at that particular scale, but it does represent the mindset that I think organizations somewhat need to have in terms of like fail fast, even fail a little bit slow, but like experiment and push, and we're going to end up in a better place, or at least we won't be entirely left in the dust. Because I think there is this like palpitation of like, man, if I'm still doing this thing that I'm doing now, 6 months from now, I'm probably 12 months behind. Right. And so running out of time here, wrapping up, I'm curious if there's any, again, Devin, going to you, big, more conservative organization. How do you, that's not a conservative appetite. How do you approach that sort of potential reality of iteration in the AI world at a big company?
Yeah, I think GSK has been all in from start with AI. We have no interest in being behind the curve when it comes to AI implementation. So we're definitely open to experimenting, seeing what's working, what's not working. We've had so many learnings, and even just reflecting on where we were last year, there's so much that we've learned about what it takes to be successful when implementing any sort of new tech here, especially AI, and what's involved. And we're better set up now to share those learnings about not just the change management aspect, but even like our approach to building different tools, integrating different tools. We're in a better position to share those learnings across other pockets of innovations and innovators at GSK. So I feel really good about where we're headed, and it's nice to know that there is that acceptance for something not working, right? And like, how do we pivot? And we have, leadership on our side in terms of, the openness to fail fast, basically, and to figure out where it makes sense to build versus buy, and how do we do this at scale?
Awesome.
Yeah, we're very much of the fail fast, fail often, but fail strategically when you can. We've always been eternal tinkerers even before AI. So being in like the realm of front end ever since responsive web design, it seems like there's always been like a new framework or library, or just the community, rallies around some specific thing, and we have to do our due diligence to determine whether or not this is something that we're going to recommend for tech stacks going forward. So we've always reserved certain amounts of resource time to be able to dabble in these things, and we treat AI no differently. I mean, obviously, we're probably not going to like go dig deep into like the new VO motion graphics thing, because that really doesn't have. Oh, maybe I don't know. Like if there's like certain web products that involve some sort of like whiz bang feature that has some scroll enabled video frame tie-in. I don't know. That might be something, but that would be a very unique project specific thing. But otherwise, when it comes to like CLI, we focus more on the technology than we do the tools. And then what we try to do is build products around those tools, and then stacking those tools and see how they play together. Because it feels like that's where you get the most benefit from, because that feels like that's uniquely your own idea. Like I just combined this thing with this thing with this thing because it fit this one little niche need that was needed for this project, or to help our organization do something internally.
Yeah. Awesome. I know we're coming up on time, and I'm not silly enough to ask another question with 3 minutes left. So I want to wrap it there. I appreciate the time and energy of all of you putting into this. I love hearing the insights. I learn something every time we do one of these. Any parting thoughts or comments from our panelists before we wrap it up, send people on their way?
My main thing right now is I speak to a lot of people about AI and AI aversion and AI acceptance. And I know there's some ethical pieces of AI that a lot of people, and there's a lot of personal pieces with AI, especially when it comes to like intellectual property, and so all of those things are very important. And I want to make sure that I acknowledge that whenever we throw out any of these like AI solutions to things, because I know it's a sensitive subject. And for a lot of the folks who are AI averse, just because of the overwhelming tendency of just the AI noise that is continuously being pushed out, try it. Like I don't like just grab a thing and do it. Like you're probably used to ChatGPT. That's probably like your gateway drug into AI. But maybe like try Claude then. And then I don't know, hook up an MCP server and like ask about it or something. Like the way that you can hook up MCP servers now are so much easier than the way it used to be. Like it's just they're called connectors now in the Claude settings. Just like dive a little bit deeper and kind of scratch the surface of something that's just a little bit unfamiliar. And then that overwhelming will start to dissipate a little bit, that feeling.
And Claude will tell you how to connect the MCP connect to itself.
Yeah, they're so nice.
I love that, TJ. I think it is like intimidating, and there's a reluctance sometimes, but I do always just love asking people to try it out, have fun with it, just do some experimentation, start light, and you know, you might be surprised about what you find.
Yeah, I would like to use it as a play. Don't use it like Google, because that's not its purpose. But use it like play. Um, Exploration and iteration. I spend a lot of time myself using Claude or ChatGPT to bounce ideas off and to help bring structure to things.
Yep.
And that's probably the most accessible way. You're not even worrying about code at that point. You're just conceptualizing. And that can be a really exciting way of really realizing the way in which it can help bring focus to the way you work.
Absolutely. Love
Love
that.
that.
I would add to all that, like with most things, expectations are important, right? The gap between expectation and reality is huge. And I made a joke about like Latin. Used to present a lot of web comps, and they'd be like, "Why you Latin?" It was lorem ipsum, right? It was very intentional, but that represented a gap between what they were expecting and the blue example, Robin raised, whatever, same thing, right? Why is it blue? We're not talking about blue, but God damn it, we lost the meeting. The more that we can set those expectations, hey, this is what you're going to see, and this is where we're at. We're at the super spaceship Homer car, and we're going to get to something that's probably in your mind less than that, and that's good, right? Prime those pathways so that we can come in with the amazing magic and not have it be derailing, but have it be the story someone told me last week of like, wow, let's do more of this, and not cool, it's done, right? Yeah, the slog evolves as ever. Thank you all for your time. I know we're at the top of the hour. I appreciate all the wonderful insights. Again, we'll share this recording with everyone. Thank you, everyone who attended and was participated. I appreciate you all.
Well, thanks for having us.
Have a great
Thank you
week.
so much.
Stay out there.
Bye, everybody.